Okay guys, this is Sully's week 1 video recap. So I'm starting out by offering him the flirt pole to see if he wants to play for a few minutes when we first get down here. I usually do this at the beginning of each training session, and then sometimes in the middle of our training session I'll give them a little play break as well. So I really like using flirt poles when I'm working with little puppies because it's a nice way to play with our puppies but keep our hands out of the equation. So I think a lot of times when we're holding on to a toy and playing with our puppy, then it turns into them starting to chew on our hands, right? Like they almost become an extension of that toy. So the flirt pole is nice because I can stay in a nice standing position. The toy and the dog stay on the floor. My hands are not part of the equation. So when Sully is in possession of the toy, I might put some light opposition on it, play a little bit of light tug with him, but I do not want to be pulling him across the floor or lifting him up off the ground while he has this in his mouth. Ooh, get it. What do you think, bud? Should we get started? So again, I like to just offer that to them at the beginning of each training session, and then we might take a play break in the middle of our video here. We'll see. Okay. So the very first thing that we worked on with Sully is charging our reward marker. So our reward marker lets our dogs know when they got a behavior correct, and it'll always be followed by a piece of food. It is a promise to your dog that food is coming. So we're using a clicker for this. And the very first exercise that we need to do with him is called charging our clicker. So when we first start training, the puppies don't know what this means, right? So we need to teach them that this means food. So when I'm charging my clicker, I'm not going to actually be asking Sully for any behaviors. I don't even need to say his name. I'm just going to click once and then give him a piece of food. This is just so that he makes that association between hearing the click and then getting rewarded with that piece of food. And we'll do this maybe 4 or 5 times at the beginning of every single training session with these puppies. So clicking just once and then giving him the piece of food. And again, we'll do this 4 or 5 times in a row. I just want to make sure that when I'm clicking, I'm not unintentionally capturing bad behavior. So meaning, if he's jumping up on me, I'm not going to click then. If he is pawing at me or anything like that, like I'm going to wait until he's being pretty neutral to click him. Good boy. And it's not a magic wand. I'm not pointing it at him, and it's not going to get him to do anything. It is to mark the moment in time that he does whatever the behavior is that I asked of him, okay? So again, with this, just making sure he has a really solid understanding that that click means he's going to get a piece of food. Okay, we're going to move into our first exercise here. So the very first thing that we worked on with Sully is following a food lure. So food luring is a really common way that we can teach our dog different positions, whether it's getting them to a sit or a down. We can use it once we get to the point where we're teaching our dog to walk nicely at our side and things like that. But before we can use this to teach our dog things, we need to make sure they're good at following a food lure. So when I'm using a food lure with my puppy, I will hold the food flat in my hand with my thumb, and my palm is going to be facing the dog. Essentially, it's going to be like a fishing lure. I want him staying connected to my hand the whole time, and we're just going to get him to take a couple of steps with me. So I'm going to show him the food, let him lick it first, and then we're going to take a couple steps together. He's staying connected to my hand the whole time. Then I'm going to mark that with my clicker and release that piece of food to him. And then we'll do that again. So getting him interested in the food first, and then we're going to move. Good boy. And I can practice this, where I'm moving backwards and he's moving forward. I can practice it where we're both moving forward. So a couple different options that I have. Good job, bud. We've also been pairing this with his name. So we're going to be doing the same thing, but now as we're moving, I'm going to say his name as well. This is going to start to work on some name recognition. So showing him that food. Sully. Good boy. Sully. What a good boy. And then I do like to make sure that my dog will follow a food lure, whether it's in my left or my right hand. So now we're going to switch. So now my clicker's in my left, food's in my right. Sully. What a good boy. Sully. Sully. Good job, bud. Okay. Right from here, we're going to move into hand targets. So a hand target, big picture end goal, is we put our hand out flat, we cue our dog, touch, and they come over and target the palm of our hand with their snout. This can kind of be used like as an informal recall. So if my dog's really good at touch and I need them to come over to me, I can cue them to touch to get them to come over. It's also a really nice engagement game to play with your puppy. So maybe you need to help keep them focused on you versus a distraction that's going on or something. You can play a game of touch with them to keep them connected to you. So to start to teach this behavior, we're going to hold the food the same way we were just holding it for our food luring exercise. But this time, when I let Sully get interested in it and lick it, I'm going to quickly pull my hand back and cue him touch instead of having him stay connected to my hand that whole time. And then after I pull my hand back, once he reconnects, that's when I'm going to mark and reward him, okay? So let me show him the food here. So getting him interested in it first. Sully, touch. Good boy. Let me turn him around so you can see it here. So getting him licking it first and then quickly pulling my hand back just like a foot or so. Sully, touch. Good boy. We'll do that again. Sully, touch. What a good boy. And then similar to my food luring exercise, I like to practice this with both hands as well. So now we're just going to switch here. Sully, touch. What a good boy. Sully, touch. Good man. Okay, we're going to do one more and then we're going to move on. Sully, touch. Good boy. Good job, buddy. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is a release cue. So when I'm starting to work on stationary positions, so like a sit or a down, or when we get to working on our mat, I need something that lets my dog know when they're done doing whatever behavior that I asked of them, and then they can like get up and move out of position or move away from me. So we're going to use okay for Sully. So to teach him what this means, I'm going to show him a piece of food. I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to toss it away, and then he can chase and consume it. Okay. We'll do this a couple times here. So for this, I'm not using the clicker. So showing him the food, okay, tossing it away, letting him chase and consume it. We'll do one more here. Okay. Good job, Sully. All right. Right from here, we're going to move into our first stationary position, which is sit. So for this behavior, since it's new to Sully, I am going to lure him with a piece of food. As soon as his butt hits the ground, that's when I'm going to click with my clicker and then reward him. So I like to work on duration right off the bat with my stationary positions, because then eventually we can develop this into a sit-stay, right? We want our dog to stay in position until we release them, instead of we ask them for the sit, we give them the food, and then they're like, all right, I got my food, I'm out of here. So I like to start to teach duration right off the bat. So when he initially gets into that position, I'm going to mark and reward him, but then I'm going to give him a few follow-up cookies for maintaining that position, and then I'm going to use my release cue, that okay, to let him out of position. You chasing your tail? All right, so if he's already in a sit, that's okay. I'm just going to get him up before I cue him. Sully, sit. Good boy. Okay, so again, giving him a few follow-up cookies for maintaining that sit. Okay, using that okay cue to let him out of position. Okay, I'll show that one to you again. So just getting him up if he's already in sit position. Sully, sit. Good boy. Okay. Whoop. Sometimes they don't see it when you throw that okay cookie, so you can just point it out to them. That's fine. So when I'm luring for a sit, notice how close I'm staying to Sully, right? So when we were doing that food luring exercise, I talked about keeping them connected to the food the whole time. You want to do that with the sit, because if you bring that food up high, he's going to be more likely to try to jump to get the food. So we just want to bring it up and back enough to help him sink into that sit, but so that he's staying connected to that food. So let's do one more here. Hey, bud. So showing Sully the food, bringing it up and back, sit. Clicking as soon as his butt hits the floor there. Giving him some follow-up cookies. Okay, good job, buddy. Nice job. Okay. The next thing I started to work on with Sully is getting him dressed. So he's just wearing a flat collar, but sometimes when we go to take that collar off or put it back on them, when we reach in to do that, they start like chewing on our hands. So I'm just going to show you an easy way to get his collar off and then back on. We're going to use food for this. So when I want to take the collar off, I will show Sully a piece of food while I find the buckle on the collar and unclip it. And then if I want, I can just drop that food on the floor. Okay? And then when I'm going to put it on him, very similarly, I'm going to use food. So we have to keep in mind on a slippery floor, sometimes he pushes the food around. So I'm actually going to kind of make a backstop with my feet here so that he can't do that. So showing Sully a few pieces of food, dropping it on the floor. So now he's busy eating the food off the floor while I put his collar on. So it's just an easy, no fuss way to get his collar on and off of him. Good job, buddy. Okay. Right from here, we're going to move into our magic mat. So our mat skill is a stationing skill where big picture end goal, we cue our dog to go to their mat, they find their way over to it, they settle into a down, and then they stay there until we release them. That is a lot of behaviors to ask a little baby puppy, so we're going to really break it down. So in week 1, the goal is just building up the value of Sully having all 4 paws on the mat. I do not care for this week if he's in a sit, a stand, or a down position. So let me grab our mat here. So when I lay the mat down, I'm going to use food to lure him onto it. Once all 4 paws are on, I will mark with my clicker, and then I'm going to drop the food right down on the mat, because eventually if we want him to offer us a down, if he starts to learn the food always happens down on the mat, he'll be more likely to offer us that down position, okay? So I'm going to lay my mat down. I'm going to use food to lure him over, marking once all 4 paws are on. Dropping some food right down on the mat. And then again using my release cue. Okay, to let him off the mat. Oops, you didn't see it. Okay, and then I'm going to move the mat. Reason I'm moving the mat in week 1 is I want to create some excitement around this mat behavior, and I really want Sully seeking it out when I lay it back down. Okay, so what you should start to see is he'll make his way back to it before I even have a chance to lure him with food, okay? So again, moving it around to just create some excitement this week. We're not always going to move it around between each repetition, just in the first week. Okay. Okay, moving the mat again. And you don't have to move the mat far. And giving him, I don't know, anywhere between 2 and 4 pieces each time. So I'm just using his kibble. Okay. But you can see now, he's making his way back to his mat before I have a chance to pull out food. He's really seeking it out, and that's exactly what we want in week 1. Okay. He's also looking down on the mat for the food because I've taught him that that food will always happen on that mat. What a good boy. Okay. Good man. Okay. Good job, Sully. All right. And then for the first few weeks, I only want the mat accessible to the dogs while we're actually working on this behavior, because we're working really hard on building up the value of having all 4 paws on the mat. If we start leaving it out all the time right off the bat, and your dog goes and is standing on it and is not getting rewarded for it, it's going to start to lose its value. So just make sure the first few weeks that is only out when you're actually working on it with your puppy. In week 1, we started to work on some body handling with Sully. So Sully's going to need a lifetime of vet care and probably grooming as well. So we just want to make sure that he's comfortable and confident with being handled starting at a young age. So today we're going to work on light restraint and then handling paws, tail, and ears. So whenever I'm working on handling with my puppies, I will absolutely use food for this. I want to get him interested in food and licking food before I do the handling, because if I try to do handling without food, he will most likely try to chew on my hands, right? So I'm going to hold that food the same way I was holding it when we were working on that food luring exercise and let him lick it. And we're going to start with a restraint hold. So this is where I slip my hand underneath his belly and just hold it there for a couple seconds. You'll see this done at the vet maybe when they're taking temperature or administering a vaccination. So this week I'm not really working on duration. I really just want him to get used to me slipping his hand underneath his belly. So I have him on a piece of food. I'm going to get him standing. Good job, bud. Okay, so I'm going to pet him a couple times, and then I'm going to slip my hand under his belly. Yes, mark with a Y-E-S, and then release that food. So the reason I'm using a yes versus my clicker is because when I'm working on body handling, I'm so close to his face that sometimes that clicker can be a little bit loud. So my preference is to use a verbal yes for this. So we're gonna do the same thing, petting him a few times while he's licking that food, slipping my hand under his belly. Yes, good boy. And we do wanna try our best to have our dog in a standing position while we're doing this. If they sink into a sit, not the end of the world, okay? So now we're gonna move on to his tail. So very similarly, I'm not gonna start out by reaching right for his tail. I'm gonna pet him a few times first while he's licking the food, and then I'm gonna lift his tail gently. Yes, give him that piece of food. Good job, buddy. So that's gonna be preparing him for like when he has to have his temperature taken at the vet, okay? So let's do this again. Let me turn him around, petting a few times, and then maybe on that third one, I'm just gonna gently lift his tail. Yes, good boy. Okay, so for handling paws, kind of similar here. I don't want to go right in and reach for a paw. I'm going to start at either his shoulder or his hindquarters, slide my hand down, and then gently lift his paw. So starting up at his shoulder blade, sliding my hand down while he's licking that food, then just gently lifting a paw. Yes, good boy. For the hind legs, I do want to see if we can get him in a standing position for this. So same thing, starting up at the top of his leg, sliding my hand down. Whoops, come here, bud. So far away from me. Sliding my hand down, and then lifting a paw. Yes, good boy. Oh my goodness. See if we can get those other two paws here. Yes, good boy. I'm trying my best to mark him when he's not pawing at my hand for the food. Sometimes it's a little tough with these guys because they're so eager to get that food. Let's get this last back leg here. Yes, what a good boy. Good job, bud. Okay, then we're going to move on to ears. So for his ears, same thing. I'm not going to go right in and reach for his ears right off the bat. I'm going to pet his head a few times first, and then I'm just going to flip back an ear to take a look inside. So he's licking the food, petting him a few times, flipping back an ear. Yes, and feeding. Good boy. So not adding any pressure to the ears, not pulling on them, just flipping them back to take a peek here. Yes, what a good boy. Good job, Sully. Okay, that is it for Sully's week 1 video recap. Make sure you're looking at your video library as well as your handouts. Those will give you much more detailed information on everything we worked on in week 1. Good job, buddy.